It's Martin Armstrong, Armstrong Economics. I've known Marty for, I hate to think now, he probably hates to think how long he's known me, but let's go with 40 and leave it, 40 years and leave it. But this is a man, I'll give you an example though, who has advised governments, hedge funds, wealth funds, and of course, individuals just through his presentations for that period of time. And one thing I want to let you know about Marty is that when he talks about, he's going to share some things. We're going to talk geopolitics today. We're going to talk more specific investment markets tomorrow. But I think it's important to know the geopolitical backdrop here. But that he's reflecting what his model tells him. Like he developed the Socrates model starting in 1981, I mean, even before that, where he worked at RCA Computers, but started to develop it. The first model I saw of this had 72,000 variables. And that's why it's so important to understand that a human can't factor all these things in, let alone when you start looking at a global approach, which Marty's and Armstrong Economics were the pioneers of that global approach, that understanding that something that happens in this part of the world can impact us on this part. That, by the way, I can tell you in all certainty, maybe even 10 years ago was still too strange. In Vancouver, what helped them is we started to appreciate foreign buyers in our real estate market. We started to appreciate when they put on currency controls in China, they found other ways to protect their currency and get it out. You started to understand that broad scope, and that's what you need to understand what's going on today. So today I thought we'd talk a lot more about geopolitics, and the reason is this. I don't feel that we are appreciating the level of risk there is there geopolitically today, and the implications of that risk. Pretty easy in some ways when you think, okay, so we got a problem in the Red Sea now, but we also have a problem in the Suez Canal right now. This is energy that's getting impacted. We've just gone through a whole period of supply shortages, for example, and we all got a firsthand look at that. This would be much more severe. So what do I look at? I look at the Egyptian pound, and I watch the way it's fallen from $1 buys 15, now $1.70. That's called a collapse. And that's why I think this is such an important topic, and there is literally nobody better I could think of chatting about with it than Martin Armstrong. So please give him a warm welcome, Martin Armstrong. Marty, let's start with this, and I mentioned this a little earlier tonight, that I remember you being with us in 2014, and you said, it was early February 2014, and you said, oh, by the way, the Sochi Olympics are coming up, and as soon as they're done, Russia's going to invade Crimea. But you told us at that time, first of all, that proved to be correct, but secondly, he told us at that time that that was phase one. So we're now in phase two. Which again, in November at your conference, November of 2021, you said, by the way, they're going to start amassing troops on the Ukraine border. First week of January, we'll have war by the end of February. All of that's taken place and gone through. So I want to start with first, your take on the expansion of war that we've seen. Your model has a cycle of war. Man, it seems like every single week, every day, it feels like we're seeing an expansion of that global conflict. Started in Ukraine, we're well aware of what's going on in the Middle East, but now we see the expansion there. We've seen different weapons being used. We're worried about China and Taiwan. So give us the overview that your models are talking about when you say there's an escalation of global conflict.
Well, basically what you have going on here is you have a few different, I would say, incentives. They really need war because we have the sovereign debt crisis. And part of this problem, in all honesty, is that, I mean, as you know, I've dealt with heads of state around the world. I don't know any of them that I could possibly sit down with today and even have an intelligent conversation. I mean, not Trudeau, not Biden, not Ursula. I mean, it's all like we have placeholders everywhere. And that's part of the problem, because I should point out that the main purpose of the President of the United States is he sits there in a cabinet meeting, and he's really the referee. Because you have all these agencies, and each one is going to try to move for its own self-interest. And Biden's not even there 40% of the time. So you can see the chaos that is developing. And you have these people we call the neocons, and I should say they're not Republican, they're not Democrat, they're on both sides. People have asked me why they always want war. I know some of them personally. Basically, I would say that when Khrushchev said we're going to, take communism and spread it to the world, they basically said we're going to take democracy and spread it to the world. And they're just angry that communism fell and they never got to shoot anybody. Because they're always want war. It doesn't matter with who. So you have these people like bashing China, saying, oh, we're going to go into Taiwan. They don't realize, because nobody's being the referee here, that China is also the largest holder of U.S. debt. So if they stop buying the debt, then what do? You then say, it's like holding an empty gun to you and say, would you lend me $100 so I can buy some bullets to shoot you? I mean, it's just, there's nobody there running the shop anymore. That's the real problem. And so we have these people that are completely insane, in my opinion, starting wars on absolutely every front. This Ukraine war was orchestrated by the West. I put on my blog, Merkel, I don't know if she had too much to drink or what, but she actually came out and had said that the whole Minsk agreement, which was supposed to allow the Donbass to separate and vote, that they agreed to that and never intended to actually honor. So I can tell you that when the 2014 revolution started there, they stuck in an interim government that was not elected, and that's the government that started the whole civil war. And it was to draw Putin in. I mean, you can even go on and you see, Google it. I mean, the day before Putin actually invades, you have Zelensky standing up saying that we're going to rearm Ukraine nuclearly. I mean, that violates every treaty that anybody ever signed. And the problem we have now is that there's been so much propaganda put out about Putin that people really need to know. Putin is the moderate guy. The people behind him are the old hardliners, and they're just as bad as our neocons. All right. And when Yeltsin stepped down, he was being attacked on two fronts at the same time. One, he had these old line communists had filed an impeachment motion to try and get rid of him. And on the other side, you have the oligarchs trying to, blackmail him to step down and put in Boris Berezovsky. That's how Putin came to power. So I don't know if these people are deliberately creating fake news that, oh, Putin's evil, all this other kind of stuff, because they want him to leave, because they know if Putin leaves, we're going to get somebody far worse. And so is that what they really want? It just, nothing seems to make sense anymore. So I think, honestly, you have these other people that are pushing, like the World Economic Forum, they're pushing for, digital currencies, eliminating cash. This is all this one world government nonsense. All right. So in order to do that, I mean, they need war because they think war will then give them the opportunity to do a Bretton Woods too. And then eliminate all the various currencies, and then
no, I can go get it though.
This is going to be great. I mean, I've been in meetings, they've actually believed that eliminating all the cash, they will get 35% more in taxation. Because the underground economy will be all gone. You see a guy on the side of the road with a sign, "I'm homeless, can you help me?" What are you going to do? You're going to say, "Do you take Visa?" I mean, it's the whole world's coming to a complete change. And that's what these CBDs are really about. I put on my blog, you have Christine Lagarde has come out and even said, well, yes, they will be programmable. What you had there in Canada with Trudeau, although the court ruled that his emergency act was illegal, freezing everybody's account who even donated money to the truckers. I really think that was a test case that instigated by Schwab, because that's what they want to do. By programmable, the Bank of England actually said, oh, a mother should be able to prevent her child from using the money for lunch to go buy a chocolate bar. I mean, if a mother can do that, what can they do to us? Honestly, they don't want you donating any money to Trump. That's illegal. I think largely what you'll also see them do is probably shut off people from being able to buy gold or silver or things of that nature. You've got banks already starting to debank gold, dealers, even in Norway. I hear from refiners, they have to account for absolutely every gram of gold, where it came from and where it went. So these are things that are the way to circumvent their total control. Bitcoin, and what really made Bitcoin take off was the Chinese were using it to get the money out of China. I mean, over 80% of the transactions were all coming from China. So it's these people they know they're losing power. And they're desperate at this point in time, and that's what I think all of this is really about. You've had Schwab up there saying, you owe nothing and be happy. I mean, he's basically an academic who is just he really does have Lenin's bust on his bookshelf. And so I've been on the opposite side of the table with Schwab. I basically say, look, we have to stop the debt, etc. But my way, society wins and the government loses some power. His way, we lose and the government gets everything. So the geopolitical nonsense that we're seeing is they're deliberately starting these confrontations everywhere. The Middle East, our computers showed that people were moving money in advance. And I should say that when I had designed what I call Socrates, never in my wildest imagination did I think I was creating a model that could predict the rise and fall of countries and war. The first time I encountered that was in the 80s when we had a client who was a big bank in Lebanon, and they had found the ledger in their basement with the Lebanese pound and asked if we could do a model. I said, sure, we put it in. And I thought the computer was wrong. I thought there was something wrong with the data. I called them. I said, look, there's something's got to be wrong here. I said, it came out and says your country's going to fall apart in 8 days. And very calmly, he said, well, what currency would you recommend? And I thought that was very strange. I said, well, it says the Swiss franc. And 8 days later, the Civil War began. So I think I saw the same thing where we had a Saudi client who was one of the biggest shippers at the time. He calls me and says, what do you think gold's going to do tomorrow? Iraq's going to start attacking shipping in the Gulf. I said, you tell me a war's going to start tomorrow? Yeah. What do you think gold's going to do? So by the time 1998 came, I stood up in London and I didn't realize, but the London Financial Times had snuck into the back of the room. And I said, look, the model was saying, that's it, Russia's going to collapse, and I give it a little bit more in 30 days. And they put it on the front page of the London Financial Times on June 27th, saying Armstrong says Russia's going to collapse. And, all right, by September, that was it. You had long-term capital management crisis, everything collapsed. So what I've learned over the years is that first bank that asked us to do Lebanese pound, they could see something was happening. They saw the people moving the money. They only came to us not to say if it would happen, but what was the timing. And so I've learned over the years, even with the Russian issue, we saw 100 billion going in, but we saw 150 billion going out. So that's how these things develop. Even when 9/11 took place, the SEC was using our model to look for anybody that bought puts a few days ahead of time on airlines. If you know something's going to happen, you move your money in advance, and that's what the computer is picking up. And so, like I said, I never anticipated that it would able to actually predict wars and things of this nature, but it's been quite accurate over the years. And what it's showing now, back in '85, I think you were at that conference. I laid it out and I said, okay, fine. The computer projects that by 2016, that would be the first time we could have a third party president. And by 2024, nobody will accept the results of that election. And 2028 may not even take place. Now, these were forecasts the computer laid out in 1985. 2016, I would say that it was a third party. Trump was, I think, third party. You had most of the Republican elites against him as well. So all of these things are interesting because I think somebody always has some inside information, no matter what. And the computer's projecting. We have a real problem coming here because Trump stands for, he's against the climate change, he's against CBDCs, and he's against war. That is like complete opposite of the Biden administration. So the problem here is they really see him as a major threat. And people have to realize that, as you know, Mike, I've met so many heads of state over the years. I was good friends with Margaret Thatcher, even went to her house for Christmas and stuff. But I've met, I went down to Mar-a-Lago in March of 2020 and went there for dinner. And Trump, it was the first time I heard him actually say that he wanted to bring the troops out of Afghanistan. But the reason was very interesting. He said he was sick and tired of writing letters to their families that their son had died for God and country. And he actually said at that time, he says, what are we doing there? They've been fighting over borders for 1,000 years. What difference are we going to make? Of course, then you had the neocons like John Bolton. Oh, this is outrageous. And he ended up firing just about all the neocons. Victoria Nuland, who's basically the real queen of them, she's been in every administration except for Trump's. So this is why they hate him so much. The neocons, they have an absentee, president right now. So they're getting to do whatever they want. You have Blinken coming out and saying, there'll be no peace deals with Russia unless they completely capitulate and leave. Over 1 million Ukrainians have died already. You have 8 million maybe up to 10 million that have fled the country. We had two employees there, one in Donetsk and one in Kiev. They're both in Berlin. So, you're completely gutting this country, and honestly, they don't care. Ukraine is just the tip of the spear, and they were using this to test weapons and to hopefully kill as many Russians as they can. And these people just want war. That's it. So the computer's projecting we got a real problem starting next year, because after the elections in 2024 here, we're showing civil unrest rising, and I don't care who wins. Neither side's going to accept it at this point. And then at the same time, it looks like we're heading into serious conflicts on just about every front. I am very concerned that the neocons are going to try and start war as soon as June, and they're edging for that. And the sources I have basically say that they're afraid that if they can't rig the election to prevent Trump from getting in, that they need to start war before the election. And that way, if he did get in, he can't get out of it. And others are saying that no president's ever lost an election during war. So that's the other thing that's going around Washington, that Biden would win if they create a war. So this is what the geopolitical side looks like. And you've got North Korea's, testing missiles again. I've got clients in Japan, they're waking up and saying, oh, we better get some money over into the United States at this point. And war is very important from an economic model and market standpoint. The United States was virtually bankrupt in 1896. That's when J.P. Morgan had to lend $100 million in gold to bail out the treasury. All right, so from 1896 to the end of World War I, U.S. became the financial capital of the world. By the end of World War II, the United States had 76% of the world gold reserves. Why? If you have tanks running down the street blowing up banks, you're not going to leave your money there. So all the money came to North America. Rare stamps, coins, collectibles, all that came over to North America. And that's what made the United States the financial capital, and took it away from Britain. So you have to understand, geopolitical that we're looking at going into, particularly after 24, looks like it will peak out probably around 27. All right. That will only send capital in this direction. That's part of why the stock market's moving up. And I'll give you a little tip. Basically, just look at the three U.S. indexes, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ tends to be retail. The S&P tends to be more domestic institutions, and the Dow tends to be the international capital. It's like when the Japanese came into, when they were buying real estate in the United States, what did they buy? Rockefeller Center, things of this. They buy the trophies. They don't go down and buy the mom and pop houses for 200 grand. So we have to understand that when you see the Dow leading, which it has led this market all the way up, that's international capital movement. So when we're going to be looking at these markets, understand that the geopolitical issues affect us even here, even though you don't necessarily see it, but it scares people outside North America that sends the capital into this direction. All right. They got to put it someplace, not even Switzerland's safe anymore. So you're looking at capital coming in from Southeast Asia, from Japan, even from Taiwan. And you're looking at it coming in from Middle East even, as well as from Europe. And I mean, it's all just concentrating. And I mean, that's what made the 1929 bubble. The capital was here for World War I to begin with. Then everybody, got all hot and bothered about, the automobiles. That was like the dot-com bubble back then. All right. So everybody wanted to invest in automobiles. And that's why you saw 1929 rally dramatically. The same thing happened in Tokyo, 1989. The Japanese yen was rising. Everybody was there in Japan. And so you had a concentration of capital, which made an excessive bubble. We have that risk going forward because if the world is looking at nothing but geopolitical problems on every possible front, it will then, concentrate again over here. And the only hope we're beginning to see is that the communism, like in South America, is starting to flip. I would listen to the speech of the president of Argentina at Davos. It was very, very good. And look, socialism only is the way to poverty. And he says, we should know. Argentina was one of the top countries in the world economically. And after they went, to socialism, they fell to 140. So this is what we're really kind of looking at going forward here. We definitely have civil unrest. Canada should take some pride in your trucker movement has inspired the same thing in Europe. I have major clients in the field of farming, etc., throughout Europe, and they were all looking at Canada. The same thing, you're looking at truckers talking about a convoy to go protect the border down by Texas. So it's Canada was the first to do so, and that really did inspire the rest of the world. But you have these insane climate change people. I guess they just never really understood simple, class that, trees and grass and everything, they breathe in CO2. If you take, eliminate all the CO2, I think you're going to have a very dry planet. But then you have these people that are just, I don't know. They're brainwashed on this stuff. Throwing carrot soup on the Mona Lisa. Oh, because it's an oil painting. It's not crude oil. Linseed oil. It's very hard to come across with some of these people. It's almost like the terrorists that blow themselves up. They're just brainwashed by other people, and unfortunately, that's what we're facing here. So just keep in mind that geopolitical is important because that is what will push the capital into this area. And that's why you begin to see the stock market rising, even though interest rates went up. Those theories are all gone. All right. We don't have, these people that put out those sorts of theories like, lower interest rates is always good. No, it's not. All right. You also have elderly and a lot of people that depend upon interest income. You take interest rates down and the elderly spend less, not more. All right. So, the pension funds, you were told your whole life to save and you live off the interest. That, what happened to recommendations. You know, so you have to understand behind all of this are these theories that are seriously disrupting a lot. The Federal Reserve, when Powell made a statement at the beginning of December, and he came out and he said, he criticized the Biden administration, said this spending is unsustainable. As you know, I've advised central banks around the world. I can tell you they never criticize the government and they do not criticize each other. All right. The last time the Federal Reserve ever criticized the current administration was 1951, and that was over the Korean War. So when Powell came out and said this is unsustainable, he knows what is coming. War is the most inflationary aspect of everything. Because at least socialism, okay, fine, you want to give somebody $100 extra a week, he at least spends it domestically. When, the joke is that Biden's created more billionaires than anybody, in American history. Problem is they're all in Ukraine. He just shovels all the money outside. So that does not stimulate the economy at all. And it's, just right now you have the head of the military in Ukraine criticizing Zelensky. I talk to people in the government there. Honestly, a lot of them just see Zelensky as a Western puppet. And if he was assassinated, it's probably not Putin. He has a lot of enemies within his own country. So you have to understand what's taking place here. That's why you had, Soros's son, Alex, come out with that Twitter thing showing a painted glass with a bullet hole and $47, implying to assassinate Trump. This is the world we live in now. At least, I don't know. I don't think anybody has ever been so bold as to do something like that. But, this is where we're at. We have all these crazy people running around. The Greens over in Germany, I can tell you, are starting to back off. They're losing so much support. In Germany, you can look at it. 2 years ago, they were talking about the AfD out of Bavaria. Oh, they're a bunch of Nazis. Now they're afraid they're going to win the whole thing. People are just fed up. You're looking at major change. You saw Argentina flip. This is happening around the world. So it's not just, isolated incidents. Our computer is showing political upheaval just about everywhere you look. And the confidence in government, there was a new study that came out on Europe, and it finally scared a number of politicians, and I ended up with quite a few phone calls about it. The confidence in the European government has fallen to 30%. And that's an official, government poll. We're looking at the collapse here of government, people not trusting it anymore. The whole COVID nonsense, it was, locking down people, and you see unemployment went absolutely crazy. And now we're seeing a lot of people that seriously ill from different things. It's just, this is what you're getting into. It's. I think that may have been the test case for locking people down, but you've undermined a lot of the confidence in governments globally. So you have to look at this.
Marty, let's leave it at that because tomorrow we're going to talk about the impact of the various things. As you said, when you have the geopolitical capital moves back into the U.S., traditionally it could be in, could be in bonds or it could be obviously in the currency, but as you say, the stock market. So all of these things you look at from a capital flow point of view. And tomorrow I want to talk like specifics, what your models are showing us for gold, for stocks, for, oil, those kind of things, all of those things and lock them all down. So until then, Marty, thank you so much for taking the time. We look forward to chatting tomorrow.
Well, thank you. And I just, hope people begin to look at the world as a whole.